Hello and welcome to Soul in Balance, and in this video we will be going over Moon in the 8th house in Synastry and what it means when we have this deeply bonding, traumatic and transformational aspect going on in Synastry. Now first up, I just want to quickly say that I actually have the moon in the 8th house. I've had so many moon in 8th house experiences, whether it's, my moon in their 8th house or their moon in my 8th house. And funny enough, I'll tell you something. My mum, my sister, and both my grandmothers have moon in the 8th house. So my family theme is definitely moon in the 8th house. And another thing too, in composite charts, I always have Pluto conjunct the moon. So I actually have quite a bit of experience about this aspect. So I actually also want to say that it's very similar to moon conjunct Pluto, moon in the 8th house. And, you just transfer that information over to the composite chart, which is both people are feeling that. But with this aspect, with moon in the 8th house, they both feel it. Like the 8th house is someone's very secretive, deep, sensitive place. And the moon is also somebody's deep, sensitive place. So anything that I do say in this video can go vice versa or both ways. And you'll find that with most of the water houses. So first up, what is the 8th house of somebody? So the 8th house of somebody is what we hide. It's also death and transformation. It's our deepest longings. It's commitment, like deep commitment. So we have the 7th house, which is commitment, like contracts. And then we have the 8th house, which is that deeper commitment, which is also that sexual and intimate commitment. And then it's also represented by other people's money, trauma, abuse, abandonment, psychology, occultism, the house of truth. It's definitely the house of seeing the truth. And it's also the house of sexuality, sexual desires, sexual fantasies. It's very much a house of secrets, extreme secrets. And, the house of the X-Files. It's that creepy house, that creepy dark house. So definitely with this aspect, for me, I feel like this aspect is very transformational, and especially for the moon person. Now, usually when these aspects come about, there's usually a lot of healing and transformation that needs to take place. Yes, there is very deep soul contracts here, maybe situations where you've had multiple lives together, but definitely for the moon person, because I have been both on both spectrums many times. So I think for the moon person, there's a lot of family healing that needs to be done. And, it can be childhood issues, it can be ancestral stuff that you're clearing from your bloodline, or it could be past life stuff. So it's very deeply bonding. So you actually stay in this situation and transform what goes on, transform what comes up. Now, that's not to say that there's not going to be those people out there, that this aspect is just purely just deeply bonding. It doesn't bring up any trauma, and it's just really easy and just really loving. There are those relationships out there that have that. But for the majority, this aspect is very deeply bonding and also very traumatic. We do see a lot of trauma bonds and things like that with this aspect. Now, another thing that I also want to say is this aspect is definitely, it's a lot like Venus in the 8th house. I think Venus in the 8th house is just that little bit more exciting, where this is more deeply bonding. This is more that, that deep, unconditionally loving, deeply bonding. The roots go further down than what they do, say, with Venus in the 8th house, if that makes sense. First up, these people come together extremely fast and they bond extremely fast. Now, I also want to say, a lot of people say that the moon person gets freaked out by the 8th house person in the initial stages. yes, you will see the red flags of the 8th house person straight away. You will sense them because it's the moon, and you will see them. But I'm telling you, if you are the moon person that is also kind of Plutonian in your own way, like have a lot of Pluto aspects, you know, you'll be more drawn to this, where somebody who is not, someone who does not have much Pluto, much Scorpio, much 8th house stuff, they're more likely the people that are going to run for the hills. You know, they might be a little bit curious as to what's going on with this 8th house person, but it's usually the people that have that healing, that trauma stuff, that 8th house wounding, that 4th house wounding, that will stay in these types of relationships. So I don't know, like a lot of astrologers that I've noticed, bless their souls, they tend to kind of make it out as the moon person is just this innocent being. Same with the Venus, the same thing happens with Venus in the 8th. I don't believe that they necessarily are. I think, yeah, obviously there is vulnerability there, it's the moon, you know, but there are those Plutonian aspects about the moon person that will draw them into the relationship and then stay in the relationship. So yes, in the initial stages, the moon person might be a little bit freaked out, like what's going to happen. I think you can sense this death and rebirth happening. It's like, you know what's coming, you can feel it. And I think that's what kind of draws you in as well. That's that, you know, that push pull, that repulsion and, you know, connection type thing. So yes, it's very deeply bonding straight away, and most of the time. If you're not, like I said, if you don't have much Pluto, it'll just be like a deep bond, you know, like, and you might not have all the dramas that go with it. Yeah, so it's very serious straight away. And it's not lighthearted, you know, like it's not a lighthearted relationship. You'll find, because there is so much deep sharing and connection, and, you know, you probably do have past lives together and things like that. Like it's very, you know, you share a lot, and it's very deeply bonding straight away. So straight away you see things like jealousy and fear of abandonment and stuff like that. So it is very serious, you know, you get together and it's very serious. This is very, what would you say, even family, familiar type feeling that goes on with this aspect. Yeah, so it's deeply intense for both. Not just the house person, not just the moon person. It's deeply intense for both. Unless unless you're dealing with somebody with like MPD, or somebody on the you know, on the spectrum of the cluster B type you know, situation there. Like it will be intense for them, but as you know, when you're dealing with somebody that's in the cluster B range or has MPD or sociopathy and things like that, you know, that intensity kind of wears off quite quickly, and that deep bond that you would usually have with somebody isn't as deep, because, you know what I mean, like you are dealing with somebody that isn't emotionally available. So keep that in mind, you know, it's important to put that out there, that that does happen. So one of the great things about this aspect is it is a very, very beautiful sexual connection between both. And yes, for all the people that want to know, both feel it. Both feel this very much deeply bonding sexual connection where you both just seem to understand what each other wants, and you really don't have to say anything. Like you probably find that the 8th house person has the same kind of sexual needs and desires as you do, and even if you don't, even you kind of bring it out in each other, so you do you know, kind of end up liking that type of thing. It is very beautiful for yeah, deeply bonding sexual connections. I kind of see it as very transformative. You know, it's one of those sexual connections where, you know, you just kind of have that very spiritual experience, very enlightening experience through your sexual compatibility and sexual connection. And especially, I'm very much somebody that believes that sex is better when you have an emotional connection. And this is a placement where there is that deep emotional bond. So sex is that so much better because you do have that bond, and you do understand each other and you do read each other so well. So it is, a very desirable position for sexual connection. But one of the things you do need to look out for is sexual addiction, which it does happen. You can't say that it doesn't. So yeah, keep that in mind, that sexual addiction does come up because the 8th house is the house of addictions, So yeah, so it can become very sexually addictive. But this is also where we need to use discernment. So if this relationship is quite toxic, or abusive to you or the house person or the moon person, it's a time where, you need to use discernment and what is best for you. It can't just be you stay with someone because the sexual connection is great, because you're not respecting yourself, and then you're saying to the universe that, I will accept this type of thing, and that's okay with me, because everything that we're putting out, everything that we're thinking and believing and showing the universe is more what we're going to get back of. So I do understand there is such a great sexual connection here, but if you're in a situation where it's not good for you, you're not being respected, you're not being cared about, you're not being appreciated, or you're being abused, do not stay in this situation just because the sexual connection is great. This is something where you have to have enough self-love for yourself and deal with the abandonment and the fear and rejection and loneliness, and choose yourself. With all astrology aspects, we always have to choose ourselves. We cannot, fantasize and romanticize and be in limerence about astrological aspects when we're in a situation that is not very good for us. So please, big disclaimer, do not stay in anything that is toxic. Do not romanticize anything that is toxic. You always have to choose what's best for yourself. And in saying that, talking about the toxic side, it can become very toxic straight away, especially if you're dealing with unhealed people. So, check out that 8th house person's Pluto. What sign is ruling, that 8th house? What family trauma do you have? Maybe it's both people bringing the toxicity in, because, and the thing too is, like, you're both very accepting of each other's ugly, like you're both very accepting of each other's trauma and dark side and stuff like that. So it is very unconditionally loving, but you don't want to be on the side of the spectrum where it's like toxic empathy, where you're putting yourself at risk having so much empathy for somebody else. So yeah, another thing too is it can become toxic very, very easily and very, very quickly because of the intense sharing and offloading, and just how comfortable you feel with each other. And because it is intense, it's bringing up each other's trauma, it's bringing up each other's most vulnerable and sensitive aspects about ourselves and our soul that that is easily wounded. So you're dealing with a very primal aspect of life. And I just actually quickly want to say, if you're a bit of a thrill seeker and you just want to rapidly heal within yourself, Moldavite, I don't know if you've heard of Moldavite. It's like the green extraterrestrial stone that you more find in Russia. It's very good for, rapid healing, bringing up that stuff that needs to come out and, healed. So get yourself some Moldavite. I do actually say that it is quite intense for some people that don't really have a lot of intense emotions. So just a bit of a warning there. But yeah, just be careful too when you do buy Moldavite. A lot is glass and comes from China, so make sure you get something that's from Russia. But yes, this is very, very good for helping you transform because, you know, the 8th house is that phoenix rising from the ashes, and this definitely does help with, you know, that process of healing and being able to rise from the ashes. And that's one of the other great things about this aspect too, is that, you know, with all this deep sharing and the psychological work that goes on, there is that death and transformation, that phoenix that rises from the ashes, and then the relationship has, you know, lifted off one layer and then become deeper and more bonding. So it is very beautiful in that sense. You have many deaths and rebirths in this relationship, you know, where you mature together, you grow together, and, you know, you just shared all these layers, and you'll find that the relationship definitely changes a lot over time because of all the transformation that goes on. One thing too that I do want to mention is sometimes, not always, sometimes when we heal our trauma, or, you know, different aspects, you know, from our family wounding, our emotional wounding, or whatever it is, 8th house wounding, the relationship, there's no draw to the relationship. You'll find a lot of times these relationships come together for healing, you know, for literally that job of healing. Doesn't mean that people don't get married and stay together and, you know, live together for the rest of their lives, but it is very much a relationship where you're drawn together for healing. So keep that in mind, that if, you know, a relationship doesn't work out with Moon in the 8th house, or even Moon Pluto, it's because, you know, that wound has been healed, or, you know, something along those lines, where, because it's very much about, it's the wounding in each other that's the attraction, you know, the attraction of being able to transform from that wounding. So just keep that in mind, that it does happen, you know. One of the things that can also come up is the need for each other's emotional regulation. So you'll find when you're deeply sharing with somebody and connecting with them on such a deep emotional level, that, you know, you look to the other person as some kind of emotional crutch, or, you know, can become very codependent, and you look to each other for emotional regulation, even though that emotional regulation comes with a lot of highs and lows. So just keep that in mind, that you need to be able to take a step back and be able to regulate yourself, be your own autonomous individual person, you know, because there is that need, like you kind of become that other person, and your relationship and the emotions that evolve kind of become your identity because it's so intense. So just remember that, you know, you're your own person. And you need to have your own life and your own identity and your own feelings of different things, you know. And that's another thing that this relationships, you know, bring up. Anything 8th house, anything Pluto always brings up, you know, like fears. Your biggest fears, fear of abandonment, fear of betrayal, fear of abuse, whatever it is. Whatever you are fearing, this house, this position will bring it up for you to heal. So keep that in mind. So you want to hold this relationship lightly, which is hard because it's so deeply bonding, but what you have to do is be able to just hold it in your hand. Like I said, with Venus in the 8th house, you have to be able to just hold this relationship in your hand, because once you grasp at it, because you're scared and you're in fear, you fear that they're going to betray you, or they're going to leave you, or they're going to abandon you now that you've shared your heart with them, that's what's going to happen. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy with anything 8th house, anything Pluto, anything Scorpio. So as best as you can is just to hold it lightly and not be in fear, and just understand that this relationship is going to trigger your fear. It's going to trigger your deepest wounding. So you finally heal it and be empowered within yourself. And you probably also find that both feel like they've had similar childhood experiences. Like they might not be exactly the same. Like maybe there's, you know, a different amount of siblings, or, you know, the trauma was different here, and here, but it's the same kind of theme. You'll definitely feel like both are wounded in kind of the same way. You kind of have that vibe with this kind of relationship. Now this also is very psychically connected. You know, you'll always feel this emotional connection towards this person. Even if you're not with them, even if you haven't seen them for 10 years more, you know, you'll still be able to feel where they are and know where they're at. Like, even if you don't want to be with them anymore and it's completely over, you'll still always know where they're at. You'll still always feel them, or you know what I mean? And even when you are together, there's a deeply bonding connection where you just sense each other. Like, one of my exes, I was at work and he had the day off, my ex-partner, who's no longer alive now. I was at work and the next thing I tasted like alcohol, like bourbon in my mouth. And I messaged my partner at the time and I was like, "Are you drinking?" He's like, "Yeah, I just bought a 6-pack of bourbon. I'm just going out drinking with the guys." I'm like, and like I literally tasted it in my mouth, you know? So it's very psychic. You can always sense each other. You can always read each other. You know when the other is lying or being honest or things like that. Yeah, so it's a very psychic connection. It is very beautiful. It can be a little bit traumatic because if they are hiding something from you, if they are betraying you in some kind of way, you know it, you can feel it. You know, you've had visions of it, or you're dreaming it, or whatever it is. Yeah, so, you know, there are the pros and cons with the psychic abilities between this situation. Now, I've seen a lot of astrologers say that the 8th house person brings out the darker side of the moon person. Now, I think this is true, but I also think the moon person does that to the 8th house person as well. I think they both, like, it's either vice versa, like, or they're both doing it, but I've definitely seen the moon bring it out in the 8th house person. You know, it's going to depend on how much Pluto the 8th house person has going on. Like, maybe the 8th house person has Pluto, the moon has Pluto squaring the moon, you know, like, and it's in someone's 8th house, you know, so, you know, especially when it's a square to Pluto to the moon, there's a lot of tension and frustration and 8th house themes that need healing. So, you know, you'll find the moon person might really bring out some 8th house stuff going on for the house person. So, you know, like, it can go either way. Everybody's got different stories. Most important is understanding the lessons, because if we can get the lessons, we can get through this type of situation. Because a lot of people think 8th house synastry and composites and 12th house stuff like Neptune, Pluto, stuff like that, you know, that they can't move on from. And I'm here telling you that you can. It's all a choice, you know, it's in here, it's in your heart. You choose to move on, you choose to learn the lessons, you choose to live in reality, you know, like, at the end of the day, we're a soul having a human experience, and we are here to learn and grow from the past and what we've learned and our traumas and things like that. And we're also here to help the collective. And it doesn't help the collective or ourselves if we stay stuck in traumatic situations that were only designed to free you, you know, to make you a stronger being, for your soul to have a lesson. Do you know what I mean? So really, it's really important to get the lessons of this aspect, because we're not here to stay stuck on planet Earth. We're here to evolve and learn and grow. And yes, and one thing too is we're all connected to each other. We have many soulmates for every single aspect of our lives. And also each level of our lives. Every time we level up, there's the next soulmates that come in and the next thing. So do you know what I mean? So don't ever feel like you have, you know, that you're stuck to this one person. You know, that can be escapism, you know, like, obviously some people escape and they use drugs, some people escape and they use sex, some people escape and they're love addicts, or whatever it is, limerence. So make sure you have a look at limerence and understand that limerence means not being able to cope with your reality, so you fantasize a relationship or a situation or somebody to escape from what's going on. And when we're separated from somebody and life gets hard, we then fantasize about that person. You know what I mean? And people always say, well, I always see their name somewhere or something and blah, 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 blah. But that doesn't mean you're supposed to be with them, because whatever you're consciously thinking, you're going to see in your reality. You know, like when you buy a new car and then you see that car everywhere. You know, it's the same kind of thing. Or if you're thinking about someone all day and then you dream about them, you know. So, you know, we really need to be aware as we move forward from 2024 onwards, is that we need to start letting go of the old lessons, you know, where we can't keep dragging them with us. Like, we have to evolve and lighten as a human consciousness. You know, like, look at our world and what's happening with all the wars and things like that, from people not letting go of pain or letting go of old situations. So, you know, so I think it's kind of perfect timing that I'm making this video. So, because this is one of the aspects that are very deeply bonding and traumatic. So this is why, and especially it's got to do with generational stuff, you know. So, yes, so the lessons that I have for this aspect is this relationship usually comes together for transformation, healing through trauma and acceptance. This is very much an aspect that people are drawn together for healing. This also brings up codependency. So it's very important that we have our own autonomy, our own life, our own interests and things that we do. Not hold things really tightly. Understand this aspect is going to bring up fear. Lots of fear, abandonment, betrayal. Not necessarily that's what's going to happen, but if that's something that you already fear, that's something that you need to heal, yeah, so just make sure that you hold things lightly, hold the relationship lightly, as hard as that is with this aspect. Yeah, that you're going to be healing, especially for the moon person, healing ancestral trauma, childhood trauma, past life trauma, you know, stuff with relating to family members. It's very much, especially for the moon person, a healing aspect. It is for both, but I'm just going to say from my experiences and all the stuff I got going on with 8th house moon with me and my family, I definitely believe it's very much something for the moon person that needs to do most of the work on themselves, and the 8th house person can be that catalyst, that trigger. Yes, also understanding limerence, like go and do some research on limerence and understand that this aspect is highly going to happen. Same with Neptune aspects as well. And also is to have time out and rest, like from each other. Like, make sure you do those things that you enjoy, that you were doing before you were together. Have time out with friends. And also, when you are in the relationship, make sure you're having fun, because this is an aspect where you're constantly working on each other psychologically, and it can get tiring because there's no fun and enjoyment, you know, and relationships need a mix of everything. They need that serious stuff. They need that fun and excitement. They need that easygoing, nothing downtime where there's nothing going on, you know. So just keep that in mind, that, you know, make sure you're having fun with your partner. Make sure you're resting and having time out from the psychological work that you're doing on each other, and having your own life, you know, making sure that, because if you want this relationship to last, you need to hold it lightly and you need to have your own life, because as everybody knows, with really codependent relationships, they don't last because it's too suffocating, it's too, you know, it's too much. And then there's that back and forth where then you break up because it's too much, and then you miss each other because then you don't see each other at all. So it's like extreme or nothing, extreme or nothing. So try and like balance out the dynamic. And yes, be careful of toxic empathy, both ways, not just one. You know, this is an aspect where you're going to be really understanding of each other and really accepting, because you love each other's dark side. Like, you're drawn to it, you're attracted to it. So you know, make sure if somebody's abusing you or not treating you right, that you're not making excuses for them, that, you know, especially as a sensitive person, you can understand why people do what they do, you know, and so it makes sense and you understand, and so you forgive them. But that's toxic empathy, especially when it's hurting you. You have to have boundaries of what's acceptable and what's not, because in this situation there's a lot of enmeshment, you know, like, because boundaries are very much watered down because of all the intent sharing, you know, because of that beautiful sexual connection where you have spiritual highs and you connect to each other on a different level. So yes, so just keep those lessons in mind. But yes, and that you're going to be triggered a lot, you know, like, it's going to bring up stuff that goes on in your family, maybe stuff that your mom does, or maybe stuff that your father does, or this healing that your whole family's needed to do for generations. What else have I got here? And yeah, and that you might always love this person, you know, maybe you don't want to be with them, you know, one day, 10 years down the track, or whatever it is. You haven't seen them for 10 years, but you'll always care about them. You will always have some kind of unconditional love and acceptance for them, you know, even if they repulse you now. Do you know what I mean? Like, you will still always care about them and want what's best for them. So yeah, it is a very, very beautiful thing. But yes, that's about it, guys. That's it for me. So I hope this was helpful. And I will see you guys in the next video.